definitely logical systems where there's paraconsistency, where truth and falsity aren't mutually exclusive.
Like what?
Logical systems where that's the case, as opposed to instead of binary values where something is either false or true, that it can be true and false, or neither.
Okay, when can A and non-A be equally true in the same way at the same time?
No.
My experience is, if I'm walking down the beach and I see ripples in the sand, and you ask me, hey dude, how'd the ripples get there? And I say the waves did it.
Experience.
If we keep on walking down and we see John loves Mary written in the sand, and you say, hey dude, how'd that get there? And I say, because the waves made it. That's absurd. Why? Because John loves Mary is qualitatively different from ripples in the sand. I have seen life come from life. Never once have you or I seen life come from non-life. An atheist and agnostic is saying life can come from non-life. There is not one observation of that by anybody. But you still believe it. That's blind, gullible faith.
Dude, sir.
I can't have that much faith.
Sir.
I only see life come from life. I never see life come from non-life. That's why it's far more reasonable for me to believe in the beginning a living being, a creator, than it is reasonable for me to believe in the beginning non-life.
If man has free will and is able to make decisions on his own, for instance, I made the decision to talk to you right now.
Right.
Now God is infallible without fault. He doesn't see time as a same conquest as us. It's like an open book for him.
Right.
Sees everything as one plane. So he already knows I'm going to make my decision to talk to you.
Yep.
So in reality, this is something that's already been planned out. God already knows which way I'm going, what I'm going to say to you, which way I'm going to turn.
Yep.
So in reality, man doesn't have free will, because this is something that God already knows and understands to be planned.
Good question. Very hard question. When we say that God is all-knowing, we do not mean that God writes on a piece of paper what you and I are going to do tomorrow, locks it in a bank vault, and then you and I have to do what's on the paper tomorrow.
Right.
Instead, what we mean is, due to God's perspective outside of the dimension of time, God is eternal. God is not locked into the dimension of time the way you and I are.
Right.
He is in a position to see what you and I will freely choose tomorrow.
Right, but isn't that contradictory? Isn't that a circular logic? For instance, if God knows where I'm going to end up right now in 10 years, would you agree that God knows right now where I'm going to be in 10 years?
Right.
He can see that.
Right.
Would you agree with that?
Yep.
Okay. So any decisions that I make up until that point to get me where I'm going to be in 10 years have already been knowledgeable to God, because he could drop back and say from 5 years he's going to be in here, from 5 minutes he's going to be here, and 1 second he's going to be here.
Right.
So in reality, although we comprehend our own free will, this is something that's already understood by God. So if God really is infallible and without fault, then man doesn't have free will.
God is omnipresent, which means God can be in Storrs, Connecticut and Calcutta, India at the same time.
Right.
Why? Because God is outside of the dimension of space. He's not limited by space.
Right.
Which means God does not have a torso, a head, 2 arms, and 2 legs.
Right. Yeah, I understand.
Because he is outside of the dimension of space, God can be in Calcutta, India, London, England, and Storrs, Connecticut at the same time.
Right.
Similarly, because God is outside of the dimension of time, God is eternal.
Okay.
God looks at all of history at a glance. Therefore, due to his perspective outside of time, God sees what you and I will freely choose to do tomorrow.
But so he knows what we're going to do.
Because he's outside
I understand
of the
that, but I'm just
dimension
saying,
of time.
Right, so there's a entity, which we will call God. No, I'm not trying to put it into a human form. We'll call this entity God. So this godly form knows where we're going to be, like you said, in any time, in any place, and any space. So in reality, actions we make here are not free will, but they're actions that are already understood by God. He knows if I'm going to talk to you or if I'm not going to talk to you. And by knowing that, doesn't that take away man's free will altogether?
No. If I watch a movie twice,
I understand.
and if I see the actions in the second time I watch the movie, and I know what he's going to do next, I knew what Dustin Hoffman or Tom Cruise or Liam Neeson is going to do next, it doesn't mean that I'm forcing him to do it.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying he's forcing you to, I'm saying, but all I'm saying is that wouldn't any decision we make or any action we make on earth already be known by God? Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. So although that we have the free will, as you would say, to make those decisions, aren't those decisions by already being known in reality not really free will? We're not making this decision of where we're going to go because this is already predestined to where we're going to end up.
Okay. I can watch my little child reach out to touch a red hot stove.
Yeah.
I know that when that finger touches that red hot stove, it's going to recoil in pain.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I know that doesn't mean I am making the child touch the red hot stove and get burned.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Just because I have knowledge that something's going to happen does not mean that I'm forcing it to happen.
Okay. I understand what you're saying.
What do you think about Christ?
I don't want to get into the whole thing. To tell you the truth, I think I just, like he said, I follow a lot of basic Christian Catholic values. I think that I'm taking my own free will to kind of make different decisions. I've read a lot of the Bible. There are some things that I just couldn't comprehend. All-powerful, loving God to think with some other people. I believe that humans are all equal. I think that we all do have flaws, obviously, like you said. But I think that with God, if there is a God, which I believe there is, being all-loving nature, that He wouldn't necessarily want us to, Leviticus 20:13, have the blood of a homosexual man spewed around the land. I don't necessarily think that would be a loving God's nature.
Good. And so Jesus didn't do that, did he?
Oh, I'm not saying he did, no, but
Right.
Jesus is the Son of God, and in reality, Jesus would be the equivalent of God. If you have that.
Good. So you believe that Jesus was God?
I'm saying if he was, I'm saying.
Uh-huh.
He would have to be. If he's the Son of God, he would have to be God. One and the same
Good.
entity.
One and the same thing.
Right.
And doesn't his resurrection from the dead point to him being God?
Not necessarily.
I think that if everything in the Bible is correct, then I think that without a doubt, yeah, he would be one with God, definitely.
Okay.
It's like water, steam.
So do you think the historical evidence point to Christ having risen from the dead?
I think there's definitely historical evidence in the area, but like I'm saying, I believe that the Bible is written by man. I think that man is at fault. So I don't think that taking everything in the Bible as absolute truth is necessarily what a God that would give us free will would want us necessarily to do.
Okay, so what test do you use to determine what parts of the Bible are accurate and what parts are inaccurate?
I don't put it to a test at all. I tell you, if it was going to be put to a test, I think it'd be my own gut moral instinct. And if I am taking the test of my own gut moral instinct, and God has created me, then I guess I'm doing something right.
Good, so you're on the right path. But I think that we can get downright brilliant when it comes to rationalizing whatever we want to do. So I think it's pretty healthy if God has given us a plumb line that we can measure our consciences, our gut with. Like the Ten Commandments, like the Sermon on the Mount. And if you really are wanting to know truth, and if you really believe that God exists, it's well worth our time to search after him. Jesus said, ask and it shall be given you. Seek and you shall find. Knock and the door shall be open. For everyone who asks receives. He who seeks finds. And him who knocks the door shall be open. If you spend 4 years here at this fine university, preparing for at most a 60-year career, don't you think it'd be wise to study a bit in preparation for eternity?
I have a question for you. What do you believe of people who believe in other religions? Do you think when they die, how do you think they will be judged?
I have to divide that question into 2 parts. What about those who've heard about Christ? What about those who've not heard about Christ? Jesus never answers the question, how is God going to judge those who never heard about Christ? So I don't know. But Jesus and the Bible make 5 points that apply to that issue. God is just. Nobody's getting ripped off. The only reason people go to hell is because they choose to live their life separate from God, and on the day of judgment, God grants their request. Thirdly, there are going to be a truckload of people in heaven who never heard the word Jesus. Hebrews chapter 11 lists some of these people by name. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Rahab, a Gentile prostitute. Never heard the word Jesus, but in humility, they put their faith in God. Fourthly, the only reason those folks will be in heaven, the only reason any of us will be in heaven, Christ claimed, is because he bled and died on a cross to pay the penalty for our wrongdoing. And fifthly, although I do not know specifically how God will judge those who have never heard about Christ, I do know that all of us here have more than ample opportunity to read the Gospels, to decide what are we going to do with
If I were to say, unless you can scientifically prove something to me, then I won't believe it. Then this is my faith.
Yeah, that's your
But science is based on a series of tests to try to prove something. It's not a final answer. But it's more than saying, well, since I don't understand, then obviously, I just don't know. I have faith in something.
The statement, unless you can scientifically prove something it's not true, is a philosophy.
Is that a philosophy?
No, that would be empiricism. That's fact. Philosophy.
I have another question. Earlier you were saying something about morality as a general being a proof for God. I didn't quite understand that. What if it's just a function of society?
If it's just a function of society,
Well, yeah, because
then morality is relative.
hundreds of years ago, what was acceptable then is not necessarily acceptable now. Like in Rome, you could have slaughtered a good amount of people and have been all right, depending on who it was. Now you can't really do that. You know what I mean? So we have now certain laws that dictate, it's not good to kill that amount of people. What up? That many people, you know what I mean? So I don't quite understand what you mean by a universal morality. I've never seen that to be true. I mean, like in a state of nature, right? If I was going after survival, I wouldn't have a problem maybe killing a guy and feeding my children. Now, in a society where there's laws, that wouldn't be acceptable. You know that you have to treat your fellow human being a certain way so that society runs smoothly. So why is morality universal?
Do you believe that if Nazi Germany would have won World War II?
Everybody always brings up the Nazis. What is this?
What if you just said yes?
Ma'am, I was
fine.
trying to answer your
I'm
question.
sorry, I apologize. Go.
If Nazi Germany would have won World War II, would that mean that the Holocaust is good?
What? No.
That would never mean that.
Okay, why is the Holocaust
That has
wrong?
nothing to do with that.
Why is the Holocaust wrong? Because it's immoral. Okay, who defines
speaking-
morality?
We're also speaking in a time frame now where we have law that also defines that kind of thing.
Where on earth do you get off saying that your particular laws of your culture are right and the Nazis are wrong?
2,000-year-old game of telephone.
How on earth can you remain intact with your rational mind and say,
I'm saying
my morality is right of my culture, but the Nazis' morality is wrong? Why? Because I assert that my morality is right and the Nazis are wrong. If there is no God, morality is created by the individual, by society, which means it's totally relative.
Process through their participation in society. I'm going to correct things.
But if there is a God, then it's possible that there are some moral absolutes. But if there's no God, morality is all relative. Now, can we agree on that or not?
No.
Okay. What is the basis of a moral absolute if there is no God?
We don't know. It could have been an invisible hand process, like invented by an incredibly intelligent God who decided that we should develop a subjective process for ourselves.
You can't prove God doesn't exist, but you can't prove he exists either.
Yeah.
Which is the same exact ground I think we're holding, is that everything's relative. That man creates individually everything that has ever been created on this planet has been a product of that which man has created. You can't prove that a God made anything.
Can you prove anything in life?
You can't prove anything.
Thank you. Does that mean you just arbitrarily make decisions, or do you look for evidence?
Well, you have to take what you're given on this planet. I mean, everything you have around you, all the elements, all the forces that push you around, you make conclusions. I mean, I'm an engineer. I mean, what I do is I take what I know and I can make things, I can make machines and I can try to benefit that which I have, but nothing's absolute ever.
Okay. So you base your decisions on evidence, not proof.
Exactly.
And the evidence is that God exists.
What evidence is that?
Everything that has a beginning has a cause. The universe has a beginning, therefore the universe has a cause.
Really?
How do
Yeah.
you know that?
How do you know?
You don't know either of
The
those
Big
facts.
Bang.
You can't prove that.
Really?
The Big Bang shows us the universe is not eternal, it has a beginning.
Did that happen? Big Bang?
Yeah, about 15 billion years ago. The evidence from astronomy is...
No, I agree that it didn't happen, but I just...
Well, then why are you arguing with me about it?
Well, no, I'm not arguing with that. I mean, your stance is that everything's relative. Anything could happen, right?
No.
No?
If there is no God, morality is relative.
What if there is no God and morality is subjective?
Second piece of evidence for God's existence is, you as an engineer know, that order and design does not come about by chance.
Evolution?
Well, the obvious question is there a mind behind evolution or is there no mind?
Well, evolution states that things happen pseudo-randomly. I mean, how did life spawn out of a rock? Nothing, by chance.
That's another third piece of evidence for God's existence. Life does not come about from non-life by chance.
How do you know that?
Because my observation is that plant life comes from plant life, animal life comes from animal life, and human life comes from human life. It never once comes from non-life.
Not always, though. There are definitely logical systems where there's paraconsistency, where truth and falsity aren't mutually exclusive.
Like what?
Logical systems where that's the case, as opposed to instead of binary values where something is either false or true, that it can be true and false, or neither.
Okay, when can A and non-A be equally true in the same way at the same time?
If you write out the starred sentence is true, and you star that sentence, it's both true and false, or neither true nor false.
What?
Do you not? All right. If I had some paper, I could show you. This, if I wrote out on a chalkboard, say, the starred sentence is false, and I starred it, then it's the starred sentence is false, but that makes the sentence true. But it's both true and false at the same time. Yes, it is.
How is it true? What's the point you're trying to make?
That your logical system, your whole example there of a professor saying something is true and false being based on absolute is not right.
No, I put forward the law of non-contradiction. That A and non-A cannot both be true in the same way at the same time. You disagree with that?
It might not be true.
Well, I know that. I might be a bad dream you're having right now. Anything's possible.
Well, see, you throw
But
away
what does
like
the
some...
evidence point to? The evidence points to the law of non-contradiction being correct. The evidence points to you and me standing here having a conversation. And guess what you're using? The same thing I'm using. You're using speech and logic and reason to communicate with me.
Exactly, and you're using that to try and define a system when there isn't a whole lot of evidence for it. There is no evidence for a God.
Of course there's evidence that God exists. Order and design point to a designer.
Well, what about in evolution? How come that's not?
What about it?
How is that not?
Evolution has nothing to do with what I just said.
Yeah, you said order and design. All right, how about order and design in biology? And there, you take theories like creationism and intelligent design, and those are all negative evidence theories where they have no positive evidence for them, only small problems in evolution to back them up.
Sure, evolution is just a process, so the question still remains, is there an intelligent mind behind the process, or is there no intelligent mind behind the process?
You're right, but it's not necessity. The evolution doesn't necessitate an intelligent designer, so that's, once again, your evidence is poor, I would say.
Well, fine. If you believe that designer genes don't have a designer behind them, if you believe that a BMW can come together as a result of a cyclone passing through a metal scrapyard,
Well,
if you believe that oxygen, which is 21% of our atmosphere, if it was 25%, fires would break out all over the place. If it was 15%, we'd all suffocate. If you think that that kind of complexity can come about by chance,
absolutely.
I've got to tell you, I can't be so gullible. Because everything in my experience is order and design and complexity of that nature demands an intelligent mind.
So you're saying there's no chance ever? That there's no chance for
anything's possible. It's possible I'm a bad dream you're having, okay? But the evidence is I'm real, the evidence is you're real. That's why we're continuing this conversation. At least that's why I am. So I don't base my life on proof, but I base my life on evidence. And the evidence is, sir, you don't get complexity by chance. You don't get intelligent communication by chance. It demands an intelligent mind. The amount of DNA in a single cell demands a creator. How can you have so much densely packed information without an intelligent mind?
I feel like it's just someone who can't comprehend.
That's the
chance.
argument from incredulity. Basically, you don't know how it could happen, so you say God must have done it.
No, it's an argument from experience.